Hey friends, I am on a roll this morning, so I just want to keep talking about the things that come to mind because, the way my brain works is like everything comes to me at once, and if I don't get it out, then it evaporates, and I don't know when it might come back. So when I'm on a roll, I just got to go with it. But, anyways, one of the topics on weighing on me this morning that I want to get off my heart, and I've I've talked about this to a few friends before, but not a ton because it's something that's difficult to talk about. But I want to talk about like the pain, the some of the pain that I've experienced from sexual assault, and I also want to talk about self harm. So if you're triggered by anything related to those things, then just skip. Anyways, so first, and this is mostly in reference to me being raped as a teenager because the stuff I experienced as a child, I was so young, it didn't affect me the same way. So, first, being raped at 13 by my stepfather at the time, uh, the first thing, or one of the first things, was this incredible sense of betrayal. Because the man that raped me, like, I loved him very much. I loved him like a father figure and like a best friend. And there is a part of me that still loves him. I'm just not capable of hating people. Now, do I think he should exist on this planet? No. If I had that Thanos glove, poof, he'd be gone. But I personally am of the belief of like once you open your heart to someone and you love someone, like I don't think you can ever turn love off. Like love doesn't turn off, not if it's real love, at least in my world. But anyway, so this incredible betrayal by someone that I had loved and trusted and admired so much was a really heavy hit. I mean, like it, it was huge. And then of course there's the actual assault, like the fear, the violation, the like not having, like autonomy over my own body, um, being forced to do something, not being able to escape, um, not being able to retaliate, not knowing what to do, that isolation and feeling of being alone. And man, I've experienced so much in my stuff in my life that makes me feel alone, which is a big part of why I'm a sharer and try to be as social as possible, especially in my adult life, because I felt so fucking alone my entire fucking life. It's like I had one thing after another happen to me that isolated me from people over and over and over again. And, being raped, repeatedly, not being able to tell anyone was a very isolating experience. I mean, it was like I was in like my own personal hell or something. Like there was part of me that just that existed in a reality completely separate from everybody else. But also, feelings of fear, feelings of not being able to trust, feelings of not being able to tell anybody else, feelings of shame and guilt. I mean, I definitely have struggled from time to time with feeling like I was too beautiful. Um, or like for instance, I mean, like I was a young teenager and it was the '90s, so like there was all kind, like I just wanted to do fashion and stuff. But I remember like um, midriff showing shirts were popular, and I liked to dress up when I had the opportunity and stuff. And there have been so many times where like I went and I looked at pictures and I kind of blamed myself. It's like, oh well, if only I had dressed like a fucking nun, or you know if I had covered my face so no one could see me, or if I had not, just if I had not been so fucking beautiful, because I was absolutely fucking gorgeous. I didn't realize it at the time. I mean, I liked who I was, but like I perceived all kinds of things wrong with my body just like everybody else does. But especially now, like looking back at me, like I just did not realize how fucking gorgeous I was. And um and I felt like ashamed of that for a while, and I felt mad at myself for being so pretty and for experimenting with fashion and for not knowing that there was some danger and stuff like that. And let me just go ahead and say that that is completely the wrong way to be. women, men, whatever. People should be able to wear whatever the fuck they want. People should be able to walk around naked and not have someone come assault them or harass them. Like, seriously. I mean, we should be able to walk around naked without any fear of anyone assaulting us. And if you think different, you need to do some reflection, friend. But, um, you know, like wearing certain things, dressing certain ways, or whatever, like that is not an invitation. It is never an invitation. People have the right to express who they are and to exist in the world without being attacked. So, even now, even all these years later, after all this has happened to me, I still sometimes like go back to those feelings of I was just too fucking pretty. Um, and then I have to get onto myself and be like, no, that is not an acceptable way to process that and to think. Like, we're not going to go there. Like, that is, no. Trying to undo all of this societal programming that has existed for so long with like the victim blaming and stuff. It's like you tell someone about somebody being raped, and the first thing they ask is, well, what were you wearing? What were you doing? Not about the person that raped you. People are so freaking oblivious sometimes. But yeah, so the isolation, not being able to tell anyone, like the fear, the pain, the hurt. I can't tell you, for most of my life, I felt like my soul was murdered. I felt like the person that I was before I was assaulted, I felt like they were murdered. I felt like rape was worse than murder, because at least if you're killed, like you're put out of your misery. But when you've been assaulted or experienced some other form of like harsh trauma, you have to keep trying to live in this world, a world that does not make it easy for you. And I mean, I I wanted to have a funeral for myself for so long. That was something I felt like I really needed to do. I never did it, and I think I'm finally in a place where I don't feel like I actually need to do that, because I feel like finally, like, I don't know, 20 to 30, I can't do math right now, years after the fact of the initial stuff, I feel like I'm finally coming back to who I was, to who I like should have been had this not, like happened to me. Am I still affected? Hell yeah. I definitely have some eccentricities um, because of what I experienced. But it took decades. It took decades. And then I couldn't talk to anybody about what I was experiencing. Like, I couldn't tell anyone. And I've talked about some of the reasons why in the last video I posted. The one that's kind of like I think I titled it like Raped by My Stepfather or something. But I couldn't tell anyone. And I had all this pain and suffering inside myself. And so I turned to self-harm to help me deal with and express what I was going through. Like I had a lot of negative self-thoughts, but the big thing I did for years is I was a cutter. I cut myself like on a very regular basis, mostly my arms, and I'd use sharp knives. Sometimes I'd use plastic knives. It was like the duller it was, the better. There was one time I was at like a softball game or whatever, and I got upset about something, and I went and I found like a stick on the ground and just started digging into my arms. I once carved "fuck you" in my arm, and my mom actually noticed that and flipped out. And when she flipped out, I flipped out, and I think I shocked her so bad that it went out of her head, because then it was dropped. It's the weirdest thing. And I think the last time I talked to her about it, I asked her, "Do you remember when this happened?" Like, she doesn't remember it. So I think I shocked the hell out of her. But I also would like hit myself with different types of objects. I know I use like my textbooks a lot, just bang things against my head or my body, slap myself and stuff like that. And then my other favorite thing to do was I would strangle myself. I would take a shoelace and wrap it around my neck, and I'd stare at myself in the mirror until I went like purple or blue or whatever. And there were a few times, most of the time I was just trying to hurt myself in order to like release some of the pain that I wasn't able to get out. And but there were a few times where I thought about suicide a lot, and there were a few times where I actually started to hurt myself with the intention of killing myself. And there were quite a few of those times, and every time I would get really close. I remember I started to slip my wrist one time, but thankfully I cut it in the wrong direction. I think movies show the wrong direction for doing that, but thankfully every time I would get real close to being ready to take my life, there'd be like some little glimmer of something that would make me smile and would make me think that life was worth living. And at a certain point, it got to be where, and I don't know if this helps anybody or whatever, but one of the many thoughts that helped me was just thinking about what I'm thankful for. And one of the thoughts that helped me a lot was, life being like beautiful and miraculous and worth living, surely because of the fact that we are alive and we are able to experience pain, which is part of being alive. And it's not pleasant and it hurts really, really, really fucking bad sometimes. But what a miracle it is. What a miracle it is to be here and to exist. At least that's how I feel. But there were definitely times where I was close to that edge of I'd rather not exist at all. If it had been easier to kill myself, I probably would have killed myself. So I'm glad that it wasn't super easy. I think I also tried to overdose on pills one time, but I don't even remember what it was I took. But yeah, so I tried a whole bunch of different stuff. But yeah, and it's weird. And I obviously don't want to advocate self-harm or whatever, but I want to talk about my experience authentically and honestly, because that self-harm, it helped me. It was the thing that helped me. Now, are there better ways to deal with it? Yeah, but I didn't have anybody or anything else. And to try and say that it didn't make me feel better, it wasn't a release of some sort, it wasn't, some way of coping, would be a fucking lie. And thankfully I never hurt myself so bad. I don't really think I have any scars that are noticeable from anything, which I'm thankful for. Um, but, self-harm is a really interesting topic and subject just because it's both bad, but yet there are benefits from it, perceived benefits from it. And yeah, it's been a while since I read up on some of that because I always thought that was a super interesting topic, and I'll have to do that again. Maybe talk about that more later. But moving on to more of the pain stuff. Man, I felt so alone, so isolated. I hurt so bad. And then when I came out about things, of course, there was the pain and the fear of being judged and of people not believing me. And that was crazy fucking scary. That was absolutely terrifying. And I had to go in front of people so many times. I sat in front of 2 juries at different times, and my final court date was 5 days long. And guys, I can't tell you, I don't think I've ever prayed so hard in my life. I was sitting in that, courtroom bench, or I was sitting there, I was so tense, and all I was doing was I was just praying over and over again, please let them believe me, please let them believe me, please let them believe me, I just, integrity and all that stuff is really important to me, and I just wanted somebody to see the truth and to believe me, and it was so hard to put myself in that spot, it's not very often that I put myself in a position where I allow some sort of decision to rest on other people. And that was really, really hard. Sharing your stories and not knowing whether people are going to believe you in the first place. And that's something that so many victims, survivors, whatever, experience. And I'm very fortunate that my family did actually believe me when I came out about it. But I know so many people whose families didn't. And I know quite a few people whose families know, they know for a fact that such and such person in the family is or was abusing so and they turn their cheek because they don't want to deal with it, or because they themselves were assaulted as a child and they're like, well, what goes around comes around, this is just part of life. That doesn't have to be part of life. You're fucked up in the head and you need to, get some help. If you fall into that, like, especially, I mean, no one should be abused or assaulted, but children should, guys, if I could strangle every fucking sexual predator on this planet, use that Thanos glove or something, I mean, I'd rather strangle them. That would be more satisfying. But I don't understand what fucks people up so bad that they prey on children. I mean, it's hard to understand why people prey on, people at all, but especially children. What kind of fucked up monster, like wants to touch a toddler or, like a 7-year-old, I mean, I know people who were raped from the time they were 4 until they were a teenager. I mean, I know people that have been raped at all the ages, some of it hetero, some of it homo, like it, you know, what I have learned, and for the most part, is that usually, like sexual predators, it's not usually about sex. It's about power and control over another person, about exerting power over them. And, you know, fuckers that prey on children, I mean, first, obviously they're fucking cowards because they're not trying to pick on someone their own age. They're picking on someone that's helpless and defenseless. So, I mean, first, just in case any predators happen to watch this video, just know that you're a piece of fucking shit. And, you know, exerting power on someone that has no chance of defending themselves against you says a lot about how amazing you are as a human being. So I hope you're proud of yourself. Anyways. So coming out, dealing with like the pain of like being judged and all of that kind of stuff, like feeling like my soul had been crushed and I should have died. I mean, like there were so many different, feeling, I felt guilty. I had some confusing processes in my head, but I felt bad that I felt bad that my mother's husband raped me. In my head, it was like, I felt bad that my mother's husband was cheating on her. And I felt extra bad that he was cheating on her with her daughter, like, because just being a kid and stuff, I don't know, I just, stupid things like that. I also felt like a lot of pressure, like I had a lot of weight on me. I felt like I had a lot of responsibility to basically like bear things in order to protect my family. And of course that was isolating and stuff. And then I felt, I felt like during the stuff, I felt very isolated and like an outcast from my family because they didn't know what was going on. They just saw me being treated with favoritism, and that caused a lot of conflict. And that really fucking sucked because that just pushed me further away from being able to talk to them. And, going into, a little later into the process, I suffered from severe depression, what I now know to be anxiety. I had no idea what the fuck anxiety was until I was almost 30. And then I realized, oh yeah, that's what I've been experiencing my whole life. PTSD, one of the things that plagued me for a really long time were night terrors. And actually, when I first came out about being raped in the first few years this was going on, we experienced a lot of stalking. Like they would drive by our house at night, and like I just feel terrified. It's like, are they out there? Like, what are they doing? Like, what are they going to do? They tried setting our house on fire. They set my mom's tires. They spread rumors. They did all kinds of stuff. They forged paperwork, and I would have to go in and do like video statements in order to be like, no, I did not go to Florida and sign this paperwork saying that this was all a lie. And in fact, they spelled my name wrong on one of them. I was like, yeah, obviously I didn't do that. I know how to spell my own name. Just all kinds of crap like that. And that being stalked, that being preyed upon, oh God, that really like pushed me over the edge a lot. And I remember when I first came out about being raped, I was really terrified to be alone. And my family did a really good job of making sure like I was never left alone because I would freak the fuck out. Because I felt like I was being hunted. I mean, I felt like I was being hunted and I was going to be attacked at any point. And I remember there was one night, because my dad lived like an hour away out of town. There was one night that I had to be on my own for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and I was so freaking terrified that I shut myself in the hall closet in the dark, and just like, assume the fetal position. And I just like rocked back and forth, bawling my eyes out in terror the entire fucking time because that's how fucking terrified I was. Um, and yeah, so I had night terrors. I'd have horrible dreams of being chased and assaulted and stuff, and I would have trouble falling asleep. I actually would kind of have like seizure like experiences when I'd lay down. It's like my body would convulse. I'd lay down and I would try and fall asleep, and I would start like shaking and twitching and jerking around or whatever. And a little later on in my high school years, when I started dating Carl, he would lay down with me at night when it was time for me to go to sleep. He would lay down beside me because that would help soothe me enough to actually be able to fall asleep. I was very thankful that my mom would let him do that before he had to leave and go home. Because, yeah, and I had night terrors well into my 20s, at least until my mid 20s. And I was super paranoid, so I would pace a lot and peek out windows. I was startled by every sound, very afraid, especially of men, especially older men. Because I think my stepfather, so I think I was 13 when he first raped me, and he was around the age of 40 or 42. Um, and also, he was just like terrifying physically because he was military and an athlete and was just like crazy built and very physically intimidating, as well as being like mentally intimidating with his like attitude and the things that he would say and stuff. But yeah, the night terrors were freaking awful. And I don't know exactly when I started to get over the night terrors and the pacing around the house, but God, I mean, I know where I lived when I finally started to get more comfortable. But I'm so thankful that I grew out of that because it was exhausting. Um, and there are other things. Um, I have definitely had like some control issues in my adult life. Like I just don't trust. I don't trust a lot of people and things or whatever. And um, I do push myself to like confront um, habits and things that I've developed because of what I experienced. Because I don't want, my big thing was I don't want what happened to me to define me and to control the rest of my life, even if it is like a very big part of my story. Like I don't want it to be like the defining thing about me, um, because in my eyes, if it is, then that's like my ex stepfather winning again. And anyways, so God, I can't tell you how many different medications I was on for years to deal with the anxiety, depression, the trouble sleeping and stuff. And man, nothing worked for me. I did in my early years. I did not like speaking to counselors. It was very uncomfortable. Medication did not work for me. It just turned me into a zombie. I let myself be put on it because my family like really, really encouraged it, but it turned me into a zombie. And I mean, there's a period of my life where I can go back and I know that I was on medication then because when I look at pictures of myself, my eyes look soulless. And I ended up having like a meltdown from accidentally taking too much of a medication sometime in the mid 2000s, and like I swore off medication. It's like nope, I cold stopped it or whatever. And it took a long time for me to feel like my body equalized, but like after a couple of years, like I felt a lot better. So for me personally, I feel like medication just fucks you up. I feel like it's way better to find natural usually behavioral changes and stuff, and outlets, like, I mean, art and stuff is a great expression in order to deal with the problem instead of just trying to put a band-aid on it. 'Cause medication is just a band-aid. It's not gonna fix anything. It's just gonna cover it up, and it's just gonna stay there. And I'm not interested in band-aids. Like, I want to fix. I'm a problem solver. I want to fix the problem. And one of the um, problems I've been working on my entire life is myself. I am the number one problem that I have been trying to solve. And not as in me being the problem, but as in me trying to problem solve my way in order to be able to exist in this world um, the way it is, with people that have attitudes the way that they have them. Because there are a whole lot of things about me that I don't talk about, um, because I know I'd be persecuted, basically. Um, and then also some of them, it's like, I don't really feel like it's anyone's fucking business. So, why should I talk about it or whatever? But, the older I get, it's like, and I still feel like it's not really anybody's business or whatever. But, the more I think about it, it's like, I like to talk about things and raise awareness of things and stuff. So I'll probably talk about them eventually. But yeah, my heart hurts so bad every time I meet someone that has been assaulted, or I hear about, one of my friends recently told me that his daughter was assaulted recently. And, and it's always like, one of the thoughts that pops into my head is, dear Lord, I wish I would have shared my story more and been louder, so that other people would have been like a little on guard or something to know what to look for or whatever. Because it's like when I learn, especially about people that like I know that have experienced something, I always, and it's not someone that I have shared my own stories and stuff with. There's part of me that feels like guilty for not having, like screamed my story out there so that people would be, more on guard and alert against sexual predators. And I know that's not really like my burden to bear, but it's just part of who I am. I just care a lot about other people, even if I have a hard time expressing it sometimes. Oh, and that's another thing. It's not exactly pain, but I will say after I made it through most of the court and the stalking and all of that stuff or whatever, I kind of felt like emotionally numb for a long time. Sometimes I still wonder if um, if I'm like a little numb to some things now. It's hard to know. Am I numb, or am I just, like a realist now, and I just understand that shit happens, and getting upset usually doesn't help. Like dwelling on things doesn't usually help. I'd rather be proactive than reactive, as they say. But yeah, there are so many people whose families or friends don't believe them, that have had to deal with so much. And yeah, I don't know. It's like, for me, and I've thought about this a lot. And one of the questions that I do get asked on a fairly regular basis is, like, how the hell I survived everything I did, and how did I don't know, turn out so okay, at least at, this point in my life. Last 10 years haven't been too bad. I've definitely still had some struggles in the last 10 years, but I have done a really good job throughout most of my life in hiding the pain and trauma I'm experiencing from other people. So I want to talk about that more, but I'm going to do it in another video. So I'll do that after this one. But yeah, just, guys, you have, I mean, if you've been through something like this, you know how heavy it is. But for those of you that are fortunate to have never have experienced some sort of assault like this, I mean, there were times I could not imagine it being possible to experience like a deeper and more isolating pain. Um, There were times where I felt like every fiber of my being was screaming out in pain and loneliness, begging to just cease to exist because it was too much. And I'm very thankful that I was born with a very strong spirit. And yeah, uh, can we please, start sharing our stories and listening to those people that share their stories and fucking doing something about this problem? I mean, guys, these are your children, your friends, your family, possibly even you. Is this really the kind of world we want to live in? No wonder our society is so fucked up when people don't care and look out for one another, and when, people turn a blind eye to the evil that's happening in the world. We can do so much better. So do better.